So I have two questions here, and I'm just going to work with the one to my left first. So I have 5x plus 20. So what you got to do is you got to look at every single term and think, what is the greatest common factor between these two terms? Well, I have a 5 and a 20. So the greatest common factor between 5 and 20 is 5. I have a variable x here, but no variable here. So I'm just going to leave it as 5 because I can't take variables from both sides there. So my greatest common factor is 5. Now my next step is take the original equation and divide each term by the greatest common factor. So here's my original equation, and I'm going to divide it by my greatest common factor. So I'm going to divide this by 5, and I'm going to divide this by 5. 5 divided by 5, that's going to cancel out, and I'm just going to be left with x. And then 20 divided by 5, that's going to give me a 4. Now, the last step is to put this together. So I'm going to have my greatest common factor outside my brackets. So there's my 5. And then I'm going to open my brackets and add this guy that I got here. So x plus 4. And that's my answer for that question. Now let's look at this guy. So I have 9x squared plus 12x here. So looking at just the numbers, I have a 9 and a 12. What is the greatest common factor between 9 and 12? Well, the greatest common factor between 9 and 12 is 3. I could divide this by 3, and I could divide this by 3. Okay? Now, let's look at the variables. I have an x squared here, and I have an x here. So what is the lowest variable between these two? What's an x to the 1? So my greatest common factor is 3x to the 1. Now, my second step is to take my original question, so x squared, add by 12x, and I have to divide each term by the greatest common factor. So I'm going to divide this side by 3x to the 1, and I'm going to divide this side by 3x to the 1. Okay, so I have 9 divided by 3, which is going to give me 3. X squared on top here, x to the 1 down here, so I'm just going to be left with x. Add by 12 divided by 3, that's 4. And I have x to the 1 here, x to the 1, that cancels out the x. So I'm just left with the 3x plus 4. Now putting it all together, I'm going to have my greatest common factor outside the bracket, 3x. I'm going to open my bracket, and I'm going to add this guy here, 3x plus 4. And that's the answer.